there, this is Carter Dabbs, otherwise known as your everyday movie critic. This is my weekly podcast where I discuss and talk about factors in the movie industry and what led to them, or just in general, talk about film history. Today the plan is to introduce you to, or rather reintroduce you to, several animated movies that shaped the genre in their time and how exactly they did that. So, let's go ahead and get into it. As shocking as it is to anyone listening, I'm sure, probably the most important animated film in history is in fact the first full-length animated film ever, which is none other than Walt Disney's first ever movie, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This movie not only showed what a full-length animated film could do, but it also did it in color, which was rather rare for animation at this time. This movie used several techniques during its process that are sometimes still used today, the most prominent technique being rotoscoping. Of course, rotoscoping is the process in which an actual video is used to trace over to make animation be almost uncannily close to the actual human movement. The issue with this being that sometimes it can lead to the uncanny valley. This process was mostly used for Snow White while she was running, or more famously, dancing. Another thing done within this movie that improved animation is that instead of your pages being clipped to the top of the board and flipping through them as was the standard, Disney had it be upside down, which allowed for more pages to be held at once and allowed for far smoother animation. This discovery was useful all the way until we switched to digital animation as the primary animation tool around the 90s. Needless to say, Snow White proved how capable this medium could truly be for telling stories and bringing a whole new world to people that was completely impossible in regular media. However, animation and live action wouldn't always be so separate. Gertie the Dinosaur from 1914 is not the movie I'm talking about. However, it was the first to do what I will be talking about, that being animation and live action on the same screen. Gertie the Dinosaur is not a full movie as it stands at around 12 minutes, but it did somewhat pioneer the idea of putting real people with these larger-than-life creatures and animations. This was done several more times throughout the years with Disney's The Calaveras or Mary Poppins, being examples of having them together, kind of, with very limited interaction due to its perceived difficulty at the time. However, over 60 years later, after Gertie the Dinosaur, a movie called Pete's Dragon tried to be super ambitious and was super ambitious. It had the dragon Elliot be fully 2D animated in the otherwise live-action movie. And while ambitious and cool, it never felt like Elliot was really in the same reality as the other characters were. Despite their best efforts, it didn't look convincing. Give it another 11 years, however, and we got Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was not only animated characters in a live-action setting, it was live-action characters in an animated setting, and they felt like they were together. You saw an average guy, Mickey Mouse, and Bugs Bunny all on the screen together, and it looked natural. This movie was able to make the idea and make it seamless. It did this with unique camera angles to hide certain things and issues that were going on. This movie also had the first major collaboration with Disney and Warner Bros., with both Mickey Mouse and Looney Tunes characters interacting with one another on screen. Anytime you see an animated character walking around in a real environment while still looking present, they are most likely using at least a couple of the techniques pioneered and mastered from within this movie. But as many of you know, 2D animation has not been the main source of animation for a while now, because of a certain cowboy that I feel like most people do know. In 1995, Disney was coming to the end of what we now refer to as its Renaissance era, this being the time where its most famous movies were made, such as The Lion King, Aladdin, and of course The Little Mermaid. As Disney was headed into a more subdued role for the next couple of years, a new company came up with a film that changed animation for the next 20 years. That company was Pixar, and that movie was, of course, Toy Story. Pixar had an idea to take the overall very crude idea of 3D animation and make a movie with it. Several even. To do this, they innovated on the technology extensively in a way that had never even been thought of. Nowadays, the movie's graphics seem a bit crude. However, at the time, this was a stunning display of talent, and its success showed that the work and money put into it was more than worth it. Before long, 3D animation had taken over in Western media due to its more cinematic feel that made it feel far more grandiose than 2D in many people's eyes. The side effect of this was that 2D animation productions, well, they slowed down and eventually stopped altogether. The last 2D animated film to be released in theaters was The Princess and the Frog in 2009. Until last year, that is, when Looney Tunes The Day the Earth Blew Up brought it back. However sad this is, it is undeniable that 3D animation can be gorgeous and bring something to the table that neither 2D animation nor live action can really do. And for all the beautiful and wonderfully made 3D animated film movies that have come out since its inception, we can thank Toy Story for revolutionizing the medium in a completely new way, giving us more realistic animation than ever thought possible before. But have you ever thought what would happen if one were to, say, combine the two? Bring 2D and 3D together? For 20 years, animation studios focused on making jaw-dropping 3D animated movies, continuously trying to further how realistic and close to life these animations could get, before there really wasn't anything else to go anymore. The style had become stale, as every movie had a similar kind of animation style. While yes, they were visually appealing, they didn't shock people anymore. It's kind of what they expected. Then in 2018, two directors from Sony Pictures Animation had an idea. They had an idea to make an animated movie that pushed the medium forward once again, in a way that had not been done before. These directors were Chris Miller and Phil Lord, and that movie was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This new style would have a base 3D animation to it that, while fluid, would be nothing truly special. However, they would take this and then go over it and kind of outline it with 2D animation techniques and just 2D techniques in general. Fundamentally merging the two mediums together to focus less on realism and graphics and more on style and intrigue. And boy, did it really work. Into the Spider-Verse opted to merge with a comic book kind of style that made the movie feel as if it came straight out of the comics it was based upon. The beautiful aspect of this new idea was that even if it was applying the same kind of techniques, every movie could still be wildly different because you could merge 3D with any kind of 2D technique, such as Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which did this with a painterly aesthetic, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem, which did it with kind of doodling style. Due to this, animation has gained new legs for the first time in a long time, being more expressive than ever before, and leading us into what I believe to be a new renaissance for the medium. Now that we've come into the modern era of animation, almost 90 years after Snow White, we've come so far from the single painted background and rotoscoped characters, from live action animation hybrids to 3D animation and a mix of everything else combined. The medium of animation has changed so much, and I truly cannot wait to see where it may head in its absurdly bright future. This has been Carter Dabbs, otherwise known as your everyday movie critic. Thanks for listening.